So, anyone in here heard of Olson? A lot of you, I'm sure. They handle some very big accounts in town. Been to their offices, and while I'm in there waiting to meet Paul and Jim, they're out in the audience. We just closed $1 million deal. It was like being in Mad Men after they just close off a big new client. So I know that's not how life is inside there every day. But Paul, CTO of Olson, wonderful to have you here.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it. Well, good afternoon. My name is Paul Bechel. As Andy said, I am CTO for Olson. I'm going to try and keep this brief because I'd like to try and keep it as interactive as possible. I'd like to really focus on some business cases so you can understand what we have to go through dealing with our clients in terms of how we determine technology and hosting and cloud usage, platform, et cetera, et cetera. But I also want to give you a little bit of background. But before I start, I have to just say, Andy, I've heard a rumor that you've arranged all of us to play golf here at the course later. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I am a golfer, for those of you that might also be. Olson, what do we do? Our tagline is we build communities. And the reason that this is important as it talks to technology is that at a foundation to what we believe is core is that there is any number of different ways to build a community, but the bottom line is you have to understand the community that you're delivering for in order to be able to successfully deliver for it. Therefore, it doesn't matter if we're sitting here and many of us may not know each other, but we are a community. We have similar interests, needs, wants, desires, etc. So do people who buy Wrigley's gum, so do people who go out and buy Porsches, et cetera, et cetera. They are all community, and you have to understand the underlying root of that community in order to be able to successfully deliver for that. I believe it's directly translatable to how you deliver technology solutions to any customer base, whether you're a large corporate organization. By the way, I come from large enterprise, so I get that whole picture. Trying to deliver to your internal constituents, or if you're a service provider and you've got big customers, small customers, et cetera, they all have a need, and you have to understand what that need is. I'm going to be very archaic, if you can pardon the word, and go back to something that you'll hear throughout the presentation. It all goes back to requirements. It all goes back to the basics of how you deliver technology to any customer base. You have to understand the requirements. From our perspective, we understand that by building communities and understanding communities. So within our suite of services, we look to leverage anything that is reasonable, logistically, and feasible for our customer base to touch that customer's community. We host large loyalty programs in an effort to provide some of that same touch points and delivery points that Allison talked about in terms of providing the customer their need. In the end, if you know the customer, you can better target and service that customer. All the way to the traditional agency services of advertising, PR. But we focus around the thing. We have to understand the community. How do we do that? We actually have a proprietary technology called brand anthropology. I'm not going to get into that. It's the marketing speak side of the house, but it's very interesting because I think at its root, it helps us define what we should be delivering from a technology perspective as well. Brand anthropology, we actually have, it's kind of funny if you don't know much about our background. At Olson, we have anthropologists on staff. We have a Stanford PhD that taught at Stanford, taught anthropology. How does that relate to what we do? It's all about understanding that requirement, understanding the community. What's at the root of what people are looking for? So the first thing that we do is we understand the community. Secondly, we understand what is it going to take to compel that community. And then eventually we activate the community. Activation is a large degree where I come in. I have a staff that flexes between 80 and 100 plus technologists in-house. That's almost 20 to 25% of our entire organization. You may think of a marketing organization as being, kind of the traditional Mad Men focus, as Andy referenced to. Not anymore. If you are, you're going to be left behind in the marketing services area. Digital, as Allison mentioned, is the wave of the future for our customer base, and even the constituents that our customers touch. They know that digital is the way that they're going to touch that community. We activate the community by putting the right technology, touch points, activation points, and obviously marketing programs that come along with this in our customers' hands, and part of that is technology. So we enable what we have to deliver to our customers via activation. So from theory to practice, okay, so you kind of understand that our methodology is you have to understand the community. How do we actually do this? Strategic clarity. Going to be redundant again, goes back to requirements. With the recognition that most of our customers are in large degree marketing organizations or marketing components of our customer base. As an example, we do marketing for one of the South American countries. We are their agency of record, and we do everything for them, from internal marketing their brand to worldwide tourism marketing, et cetera. We have to understand strategically what they're looking to do in the big picture. Apologize for the redundancy, it goes back to requirements. So we need to understand what they're trying to drive in terms of their community. How do we do that? We go from understanding the ask. If this doesn't look like a standard SDLC process, just raise your hand because it should. Understand the ask, understand the client, define available options, and collaborative solutioning. In my experience, given the fact that our customer base tends to be that marketing targeted organization, I know have worked within marketing organizations within your client base or within your own organizations and understand how challenging that can be sometimes to actually be able to answer some of this, because a lot of marketers have the strategic understanding of what they'd like to achieve tactically. It's difficult for them to understand how they're going to do that within all the constraints that we as technologists always know that we have to live within. Security, et cetera, and I'll talk about that real briefly. We have to, again, be able to provide a solution that's applicable to our customers. So there's one clip from Moneyball, given that somebody just mentioned that in one of their speeches, that I'd like to reference, because we actually use it quite regularly within our organization. So if you happen to have seen the movie, recognize it at all, Brad Pitt's sitting in the scouting room, and all the scouts are around the table, and Brad says, "What's our problem?" And the scouts start, listing a litany of problems, of which nothing has to do with the answer that Brad's looking for. They think that they're trying to replace players that they can't reach. They don't have all the skills or accessibility to the players. Brad said, no, that's not our problem. Our problem is that the Yankees have a payroll up here and the Oakland has a payroll down here, and if we try and compete up here, we will never succeed. In that context, he understood the problem. Part of what our challenge is with our customer base is getting them to understand the problem, and it relates directly to how we execute and how we touch our panels in terms of technology. How do we get the message across? How do we leverage all that litany of technology that's available to us and actually utilize that to benefit our customer? As I was mentioning, our marketing organizations, or the customers that we deal with, they understand their end need, whether it's to drive sales, increase revenue, whatever their goal is from a marketing organization. Very rarely do they understand all of the litany of challenges that we face in trying to put together a solution. You can see that all of the bullet points of the diligent items that you have to be aware of when solutioning have nothing to do with all the technologies listed. And this is just a small litany of technologies that we deal with in trying to service our customers across the globe. Everybody in this room deals with this type of list of technologies ad nauseum, plus tenfold. So that's not new. But within our customer base, how do we try and make sure they understand the challenges that come with this and marry that with the bullet points that we need to be concerned about above? And here's really I wanted to just spend last little bit of time, because I know our time is short. I want to walk through a couple of examples so that you can see how we help our customers understand what's right and what's wrong. A little bit of background. At Olson, we have 2 private data centers. We leverage those as many of your customers do, or as you do yourself, to host solutions not only for ourselves but for our customers. We actually have many cloud-based solutions for our customers as well. We do hybrid solutions. So we have that in complete litany, as you would expect an organization of our size would be faced with when dealing with customers that are, the world leaders in some of their market industries. But how do we help them walk through this process of making good decisions? A challenge, before I get to the business cases, that we always face is, again, typically within the marketing services area, we're dealing with marketing organizations that may not have the best relationships with their own IT organizations. We end up being a liaison in that case. not only do we have to sometime help foster the relationship between marketing and IT within their own organizations, but we actually end up being their IT organization in many perspectives. And I'm sure Allison's organization sees that as well. That's a challenge when you're starting to deal with billion-dollar organizations in which, coming from the enterprise background, I know that they need to be making good business decisions. And marketing organizations want to drive. They want to push. They want to push the envelope. They want to push it faster and farther than corporate IT or internal IT will allow. And that's the challenge, and that's the balance. How do you balance that with still providing all the diligence of all those bullet points that I mentioned on the previous slide, and making sure that the marketing organization is making good decisions? Because in the end, it's not about the marketing organization. It's about their customer base and providing them solution touch points in order to make them successful. So, a couple of real quick business cases. Loyalty platforms. We host any number of different sizes of loyalty platforms, including some of the world's largest. This is an interesting challenge that we face in that not only do we have to have enterprise integration back to their corporate environments, but we also have to be their steward of the data that we host for them. In many cases, our loyalty customers do not want data hosted in the cloud. They don't trust the security, regardless of whether their own expertise or our expertise can bring to the conversation. And to be frank, from a data perspective, we aren't hosting any loyalty data in the cloud at this point. However, we leverage all of our web serving, web hosting, CDNs, et cetera. We leverage the cloud for all of that for about 50% of our customers that understand the value that that type of service can bring to them. But this is very much on a case-by-case basis. We have one loyalty platform, and you don't necessarily think of loyalty platforms processing that much, but we process 3 billion transactions a year for our loyalty customer in an industry that is not that significant. It should not be handling that many business transactions, but that's the volume that we generate through loyalty. Yet our customer still says, I see the value in highly protecting that data. So we host that within a private data center that we run operationally. Second, Board of Tourism. I spoke to this just briefly earlier. We have a customer that is a country in which we do everything soup to nuts for them from a marketing perspective. They very much want to have worldwide access to all of their information if and where appropriate, especially from all those potential customers of which all of us would fall into that realm sitting here. There's a solution where we have that in the cloud with the cloud CDN, and we want it to be as performant as possible, primarily because not that we can't reach, obviously, the customer base, but being in the tourism industry, relevant to this specific conversation, talk about the website as an example, they want highly visible, high definition imagery to go along with their country. That's part of what makes that particular destination special, and hard to do that. When you're hosting centralized non-private or non-public cloud with a private CDN. Public CDN works wonderful for them, and we touch everybody across the globe with that particular solution. Retail. We have more than a handful of retailers that are very consistent in the fact that the services that we provide to them, even all of those digital touch points, be hosted within their environment. They are very close holding that data. They want to hold that data very close vested in their solutions, regardless of what data we talk about. And as you've all talked about over the course of the day, as you can imagine, all of these types of customers have that big data need, have that large volume of data. We apply significant analytics to all of this. Yet, retail space, more often than not, they do want to keep that very closely held, just because they want to be able to leverage it as much as possible internally. They haven't convinced themselves to a large degree that taking it outside the walls, or at least the majority of the customers that we deal with, is a viable solution for them. And last, consumer products. We're dealing with one of the largest electronic consumer product manufacturers today, and that is a very interesting niche industry in that consumer electronics need to run faster than we can even service them to some degree from a marketing service provider. They need to be out in front of that market far more advanced than most traditional enterprise level planning accounts for. Well, how do you take into account then all of the due diligence that you need to apply when applying systems to environments like that, security, availability, operational readiness, et cetera, when you've got a customer that needs to move faster than the speed of light, because that's the industry that they're in. All of those challenges come down to the fact of one last thing. And in our terminology, it's understanding the community. But bottom line, from this presentation, it still goes back to understanding the requirements. I know it is archaic to say that, but that is foundationally exactly what we need to do when we are working with our customers to make sure that we are delivering them a solution that is viable, but works long-term and is more strategic than it is just operational or tactical. I think I have used up my time, so I appreciate everybody's attention. I know we're going to take a couple of questions.
You got it. Absolutely. Allison, if you want to join us back up here. Each share a part of the podium. Questions from the audience first? Otherwise, I got a couple. Party in the back.
This is for the gentleman from Olson. You mentioned that you have some customers that elect to use your private data center for like their loyalty programs. My question is, from the customer perspective, what's the difference between using the cloud and your private data center? I mean, from the customer perspective, it's still outside the walls of their enterprise. And so is it the case that that data just simply isn't transiting the internet and therefore is safer because it's flowing along private pipes into your data center? Or does the customer truly believe that your security controls are more rigorous than Amazon?
That's a good question. Actually, it's a combination of that plus more. One, with, again, the recognition that, especially when we're dealing with loyalty programs, many of those loyalty divisions are not necessarily tightly tied to IT. So there isn't that rigor within the loyalty division to understand the security implications, the performance implications, et cetera. They understand the business of loyalty. Now, that is not a blanket statement because there are some very good loyalty programs out there that are tightly integrated enterprise-wide. But in the case that of the customers that we deal with, they can kind of trust and hold us clearly accountable from the security perspective. We've got all the security compliance audits, et cetera, and they want that culpability, if you would. They want to be able to say, Olson, I know that you could put it out in the cloud and you could have the same security requirements, but I want it sitting in your data center in which you're under total control and it's locked down, et cetera. I think also secondarily, being that, again, a lot of those departments are more marketing focused than enterprise focused, it is a lot about perception of performance. Whether it's perception of performance in data transit, because we tie tightly with their enterprise application, performance of the back-end systems, all the analytics, reporting, et cetera, that get run off of it, or perception of just availability, not from necessarily a system availability, but from a data availability, resource availability, et cetera. Our customers tend to look at us and kind of want that high touch point, one of the services that we provide with that loyalty solution, and they just get a better sense of comfort from that being within a privately hosted solution. Now, having said that, with full recognition that loyalty has been an industry that is maturing over time, I wouldn't hesitate to think that more and more of that's going to mature into the cloud. Right now, they are just a little bit more hesitant to do that. And if I had to put my finger on a single discussion point, it's really around security.
All right, Allison, so technology can be perceived as something that can be a competitive advantage for a marketing agency firm, or it can be table stakes. From your interactions, you're more on the business side. Are you needing to go defend and brag about the table stakes technology so that wins the business, or is the creativity and how you integrate Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube so much more meaningful?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andy. I think that mostly our marketing officers, or most of my business counterparts as we work at agencies, are starting to understand and realize the value behind the customer experience and how it makes sense in a longer term. I think that as we are getting to 2013 and beyond, our marketing managers are starting to realize that a lot of the websites were built without an understanding or even a strategy behind customer experience and how important it is. So they've kind of built this, and I think we talked about this before a little bit about just kind of building it, shooting, and then aiming, building it and getting the community to come, but not really understanding who they are. And I think today's world, you've kind of got to just assume that that's where their starting point was and help them understand the value and then get them into the future.
Yep. Paul, any other comments? We got one other question coming up here.
No, I think Allison stated it very well.
I think that gentleman had a question as well. So my question is a little bit to both of you, and it has to do with your point of repetition, understand the requirements. To what degree are you finding that your customers actually understand the technologies, the social media and the cloud and the big data that you are applying to their problems, and how much do you need to steer the conversation of the requirements when you engage with them?
I think that, I mean, in general, the conversation and the dialogue has been changing with our counterparts, with our businesses, more so in the recent past. It's opening up the dialogue much differently. We're starting to ask more questions about what their business objectives are and understanding that we play a valuable part in helping them achieve that. What we've done, I think, in a brand space has done a great job of segmenting. We've got different agencies oftentimes managing the brand, and that kind of puts barriers between understanding the whole. And so we've had to kind of pry deeper into understanding how to perform at a very integrated level between all agencies, between all service providers, to kind of understand what the general core objectives are and how each play a part in achieving them. So it's really shifted the dialogue.
Excellent. Was there another one over here? Great.
Andy, can I just throw
please
in one last thing? I think our customers are becoming more sophisticated. They're learning more. General education of our customer base around technology, they're understanding more and more of it. They're bringing their own thoughts, desires, needs, wants, and even starting to bring more of their enterprise counterparts to that conversation. But I truly believe that, at least in the business that we're in, the technology should be transparent to the entire solution. If technology is visible, we have not done our jobs. With that being said, they often rely on us to make that, to enable that. You know, they want us to provide a solution that works for their business. Technology is just an enabler of that.
So Allison, really appreciated hearing your perspective as a potential customer and user of cloud. It sounded like during your presentation that there were some barriers or either some unknowns, or you know that there are things you're looking for but you don't see them yet. So I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate a little bit on what's going to get you to the threshold where you're ready to adopt cloud.
Sure. I think Google Analytics has become our best friend. We're starting to understand that as brand managers, we're managing content that's driving, it's acting as a stimulus and understanding what that response is. And we're doing that in a digital community. We're taking Google Analytics at its very kind of simple form and understanding what the connection points are between the data that we drive and manage and create and what the after effects are from a customer standpoint. So that's where we're at today, and I think we're going to evolve. Our digital system is kind of in that 1.0 kind of early iteration. And as we learn more about the data that's available and how to make those connection points, we'll get to 2.0 and beyond.
Great answer. Thank you so very much, both of you, for coming. One more big round of applause, please. Videos. Thank you for being a part of the inaugural BigCloud event in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We'll see you next year in March. To all of you, thank you. To our sponsors, thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.